the toast. Some children take longer to become successful. The room filled with polite laughter. Glasses clinked. Smiles stayed fixed. Music continued softly in the background. But the sentence didn't move past me. It stopped, settled, and made itself comfortable. I was sitting near the back of the banquet hall, halfway through my father's anniversary toast. 50 relatives and family friends had gathered to celebrate my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. Decorated tables, golden banners, carefully planned speeches. Everything looked warm. Everything sounded joyful. Until the direction shifted. My father smiled as he continued speaking into the microphone. Of course, he added lightly, some of our children figured things out faster than others. More laughter. Then his eyes moved deliberately toward me, and the room followed, not sharply, not dramatically, but clearly. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't accidental. This was placement. Beside me, my cousin shifted slightly, unsure whether to laugh or stay neutral. Across the room, my older brother raised his glass confidently, already positioned as the successful example in the narrative. My mother stepped closer to the microphone, smiling in that polished way she used during formal events. But we still love all our children equally, she said, adding a soft laugh. Equal love, unequal respect. The audience responded warmly, because from the outside, it sounded harmless, playful, relatable, but context changes everything. For the past 2 years, I had been rebuilding my career after leaving a stable but unfulfilling job to start something of my own. It wasn't flashy yet. It wasn't predictable. And it certainly wasn't ready for public comparison. But it was real. It was disciplined. And it was working, just not loudly enough for anniversary speeches. I didn't react, didn't force a smile, didn't look down. I simply listened, because moments like this don't hurt the way people expect. They clarify. My father continued his speech, now fully comfortable. Success takes effort, he said, and sometimes direction. Another gentle wave of laughter. The message was subtle, but precise. Direction. Meaning. Someone hadn't had it. Meaning me. I felt my phone vibrate, lightly on the table, probably a message from a friend asking how the event was going. I didn't check it. I was too focused on the realization forming quietly inside me. This wasn't encouragement. This wasn't concern. This was positioning. Public positioning. And public positioning changes relationships. The speech ended with applause. Music resumed. Conversations returned to normal. Just like that, the moment dissolved for everyone else, but not for me. A few relatives approached afterward, offering the familiar phrases people use when they sense something uncomfortable but don't want to address it directly. They didn't mean anything by it. You know how parents are. They're just proud. I nodded politely, because explaining subtle disrespect to comfortable people rarely works. I stayed for another 20 minutes, long enough to avoid making a scene, long enough to confirm something important. No one, not my parents, not my siblings, noticed I had gone quiet. That told me everything. I stood up calmly, adjusted my jacket, and walked toward the exit. No announcements. No emotional reactions. No dramatic goodbyes. Just a silent decision. Near the doorway, I paused for a moment and looked back at the room. The laughter, the lights, the celebration. 30 years of marriage being honored, and one relationship quietly shifting. I didn't feel anger. I felt alignment, because sometimes people don't push you away loudly. They do it carefully, publicly, with a smile. I stepped outside into the cool night air and exhaled slowly. Then I did something simple. I left, not just the event, the expectation, the comparisons, the need to be understood by people who had already chosen a narrative. They thought it was just a joke. They had no idea it was a turning point. The years that followed, the next morning felt quieter than expected. No apology message. No, did you leave early? Text. No follow-up at all. At first, I thought maybe they were giving it time, letting the moment settle before reaching out. But days passed, then weeks, and the silence stayed. That was when I understood something important to them. Nothing unusual had happened. The speech was just humor. The laughter was just atmosphere. My absence was just scheduling. But to me, it had been clarity. I didn't announce any decisions. I didn't send long emotional messages explaining how I felt. Instead, I made one adjustment quietly. I stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. Calls became shorter. Visits became rarer. Eventually, they disappeared altogether. Not dramatically, gradually. And that gradual distance gave me something I hadn't realized I needed: mental space. Without constant comparison, my focus sharpened. The business I had been building, slow, uncertain, and fragile, suddenly had room to breathe. I worked earlier mornings and later nights, not out of pressure, but direction. When no one expects fast success from you, something interesting happens. You stop performing progress. You start building it. The first year was still difficult. Revenue was inconsistent. Some months felt like forward motion, others like survival. But I stayed steady, not chasing validation, chasing structure. I studied markets more carefully, learned from mistakes faster, built systems instead of relying on bursts of motivation. Discipline replaced doubt. By the second year, the instability began to smooth out. Clients stayed longer. Referrals appeared. The numbers, once unpredictable, started forming patterns. Progress didn't arrive loudly. It arrived consistently. During that time, I occasionally heard updates about family events through relatives, birthdays, holidays, celebrations. My name rarely came up. Not negatively, simply not at all. And surprisingly, that didn't hurt anymore, because distance had already done its work. I had stopped trying to prove something to people who weren't watching for the right reasons. By year 3, the business crossed a milestone I had once written down quietly in a notebook, the kind of goal you don't share because it sounds unrealistic when spoken out loud. I didn't celebrate publicly. I upgraded stability instead, cleared debts, expanded operations carefully, built margins instead of appearances. Success, I realized, feels very different when it isn't tied to validation. Around that time, my phone rang one evening. My mother, the first direct call in nearly 2 years. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice sounded normal, casual. How have you been? Good. Busy. Steady. We spoke politely, safely, surface level. Then she said something that confirmed everything. We heard your work is going well. Heard, not saw, not experienced, just heard. Information travels even when relationships don't. I'm glad, she continued. Things take time. I smiled slightly because suddenly the sentence from that anniversary night echoed back in my mind. Some children take longer to become successful, but time changes context, and context changes meaning. I agree, I said calmly. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable, reflective, but neither of us mentioned the speech. Neither of us mentioned the night I left, because some turning points don't need revisiting. They show their impact through results. After the call ended, I didn't feel closure. I felt confirmation. Distance hadn't weakened me. It had refined me. And the version of myself I was becoming no longer needed comparison to stay motivated. The anniversary speech had been meant as humor, but it had quietly become fuel. They thought it was a small moment. They didn't realize it had started a completely different direction.